If you listen to business news for even like 5 minutes, you get hit with all these headlines.
Oh yeah, all the jargon.
The GDP increased by 2.5% last quarter. Or the one everyone dreads, the economy has officially entered a recession.
Right.
We hear these numbers all the time, but for most people, they just feel like these distant technical things.
And I think that's almost by design. These figures are often presented like there's some kind of secret code that only economists and bankers can understand.
Exactly.
But the truth is, the system,
Yeah.
the whole way we figure out if a country is growing or shrinking, it's actually rooted in some pretty simple accounting ideas.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to give you that shortcut. We are getting into the foundation of all of this, which is national income. Okay, let's unpack this. We're not just defining a term. We are looking at the mechanics, and I think crucially revealing some of the hidden flaws in this global economic scoreboard.
It's so fundamental. When we talk about how rich a country is or how productive, this measurement is the global standard.
So where do we start? The definition, I guess.
Yeah, the simple definition.
National income. It's the total value of all the final goods and services produced inside a country over a specific time, usually a year.
It's the grand tally. Think of it like a report card for the entire economy. Every single factory, every service worker, all of it.
And the number we hear most often in the news, that's gross domestic product, right? GDP, that's the big one.
That's the one. It's the headline figure. If you understand how GDP is calculated, you basically understand the foundation of modern macroeconomics.
Okay, so how do they calculate it? This is where it gets interesting.
It is. Because logically, you should be able to calculate that final number in 3 completely different ways.
And they should all add up to the same thing.
In theory, yes. They should yield the exact same result. It's this brilliant system of checks and balances.
So these 3 roads, what are they? Output, income, and expenditure. They're just different angles on the same thing.
Precisely. Let's start with the output method. This is the one that's most intuitive for people. You just add up the market value of everything produced. Every car, every cup of coffee, every movie ticket.
But hold on, a question comes up immediately. If you count the car, but then you also count the steel and the tires that were sold to the car company, aren't you counting things twice?
That is the single most critical challenge of the output method. And it's exactly why we only count the value of final goods and services.
Ah, okay, so you don't count the flour that goes into the bread, just the loaf of bread itself.
Exactly. The value of the flour, the yeast, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's already included in the final price of the loaf. It's all about measuring value added.
Yeah.
So we're seeing new wealth being created, not just transactions.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's one lens. Production, what's the next one?
The next road is the income method.
Okay.
So instead of counting the product, we ask who got paid for making it. We count the earnings.
So my salary.
Your salary? Yep. We add up all wages and salaries, all the profits businesses earned, the interest paid on loans, and any rent that's collected on property.
So every dollar that comes in as profit for a company or gets paid out as a wage, that's a piece of the national income pie.
Precisely. If you think about it, all the output that gets produced is eventually sold, and all those sales create income for somebody. So output has to equal income.
It's a closed loop.
It is.
Which brings us to the third road, the expenditure method. This is the one we hear about all the time.
This is the one that drives the news cycle because it's directly tied to things like recessions. We're tracking the spending on all those final goods and services.
And there's a famous formula for this, right?
There is. C plus I plus G plus an X.
Okay, let's break that down. C is consumption.
That's us, right?
That's us. Private citizens. It's groceries, haircuts, Netflix subscriptions, everything you and I buy. In an economy like the US, this part alone is huge. It can be like 2/3 of the entire GDP.
Wow. Okay, and then there's I, investment.
Oh.
Now, this isn't buying stocks.
No, and that's a crucial distinction. In this formula, investment means businesses buying new machinery, building new factories.
Productive things. Exactly. Or building new houses.
Yeah.
It's about creating capacity for the future.
Got it. G is government spending. That one's pretty self-explanatory.
Right. Military salaries, new roads, public schools, all of that.
And the last one, NX, net exports.
Net exports.
Yeah.
So you just take the value of a country's exports and subtract the value of its imports. If you sell more than you buy from other countries, it adds to your GDP.
And if you import more, it subtracts from it.
You got it.
So the car that was produced, that's output. The wages paid to the workers, that's income. And the money spent to buy the car, that's expenditure.
They're all measuring the same circular flow of money.
But do they actually line up perfectly in the real world?
Well, what's fascinating here is that no, They almost never do.
Yeah.
Not perfectly.
Really?
Yeah, because of, measurement challenges, statistical errors, timing issues. But that's why economists are constantly refining the data. Having these 3 different methods makes the final number incredibly robust, even if it's a bit messy behind the scenes.
This can all feel a little academic, I think, until you see it in action. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at these numbers for real countries, they tell you a story. They show you what the real engine of that country's economy is.
Absolutely. The data reveals the plot, you could say, and you can see the impact of global events almost immediately.
Okay, let's take an example. Nigeria. Our sources show this crystal clear connection. When global oil prices fall, Nigeria's GDP drops right along with them.
And that makes perfect sense because Nigeria's economy is so fundamentally tied to oil exports. When the price for that one commodity falls, the total value of their output just plummets. It's right there in the calculation.
It shows their main strength, but also a huge vulnerability.
A huge one.
Now, let's contrast that with, say, Kenya. Their national income gets a huge boost when their agricultural sector does well.
Right. And again, that reflects the makeup of their workforce.
Yeah.
So many people there depend directly on farming. A good harvest means higher output, which means higher wages and profits. It boosts both the output and the income side of the ledger.
And then we come back to the United States. Our GDP seems to rise whenever consumers feel confident and start spending more.
And that just shows you the incredible power of that CMI for consumption in the expenditure formula. The U.S. economy is fundamentally driven by people buying things, especially services and technology.
So the data itself points to a country's core identity. Oil for Nigeria, farming for Kenya, consumer spending for the U.S.
It gives policymakers a roadmap. It shows them where their strengths are, but maybe more importantly, it shows them where they're exposed. If you're Nigeria and you see oil prices dipping, you know you have a problem.
So let's pivot to the most important part of this. We talked about how important GDP is, but we have to talk about the limitations.
Oh, this is the critical insight you need to take away from all this.
Right, because a lot of economists argue that GDP is actually a pretty poor measure of overall well-being.
It is. It measures activity, but it's totally blind to how that activity happens. And maybe more importantly, who benefits from it.
Give us an example. What's a major blind spot?
I think the most obvious one is all the non-market activity.
Stuff that doesn't have a price tag.
Exactly. GDP only counts things that are bought and sold. So a parent staying home to raise their kids or you volunteering to clean up a park. Incredibly valuable for society, right?
Of course.
But they add $0 to the GDP. Now, if that parent hires a nanny, suddenly GDP goes up. But the amount of actual childcare happening is basically the same.
That's a great point. And what about the environment? It seems like GDP almost rewards pollution.
It can, yeah. If a factory pollutes a river, that's bad. But then if the government spends $1 billion cleaning it up.
Both the factory's output and the cleanup costs get added to GDP.
Exactly. GDP sees $1 million spent on a new library, the exact same way it sees $1 million spent cleaning up a toxic spill. There's no moral distinction. It's just throughput.
And the big one, I think, is inequality. A country's GDP can grow by 5%, which sounds great, but what if all of that growth, all that new money, only went to the top 1%?
And that's its most damaging blind spot. GDP is just an average. It tells you nothing about distribution. You can have skyrocketing GDP right alongside soaring poverty.
So the number itself doesn't tell you if the average person is actually any better off.
Not at all. Which is why you see more analysts using other metrics now, like median income, to try and get a clearer picture.
Okay, this has been incredibly clarifying. So what does this all mean? Why do these huge abstract numbers matter to you listening right now?
Well, the applications are immediate. They affect your taxes, your job, your savings. First, governments use this data to design policy.
So if they see that business investment, the eye is falling,
they know they might need to offer incentives, maybe cut corporate taxes to get businesses spending again. So the tax rate you pay next year is directly connected to last year's GDP report.
Wow. Okay. What else?
Well, think about investment markets.
Yeah.
Investors use this data to decide where to put their money. If a country shows steady GDP growth, it looks like a safe bet.
And if it's shrinking?
It's a flashing red light.
Yeah.
Capital flows out, businesses can't expand, and job growth suffers.
And of course, it's how we track recessions, comparing the number quarter over quarter.
Right. It gives us that historical marker to see the cycles of expansion and contraction. We have to have that baseline.
And finally, if we connect this to the bigger picture, even with all its flaws, it's still our best proxy for progress, right?
It is. If national income is growing faster than the population, it generally means there's more wealth and productivity being created per person. It shows a nation's ability to provide opportunities, even if it doesn't guarantee a fair share for everyone.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. We've gone from these abstract headlines to understanding that national income is this total value of production. We know the three ways to measure it: output, income, and expenditure, and how they all cross-check each other.
And we saw that these numbers aren't abstract at all. They drive policy, they drive investment, and they show the real strengths of a nation.
But the biggest takeaway for me is learning to ask the next question.
Yes.
To look past the headline number and ask, okay, what's driving this? Who is actually benefiting from this growth?
Exactly. So the next time you hear the GDP grew by 3%, you'll know it's not just some number. It is the heartbeat of the nation's economy.
But a heartbeat that's blind to so many things we value, like volunteer work, or a clean environment, or a fair distribution of wealth. And that really leaves you with a question, doesn't it? Should we keep relying so heavily on a metric that just ignores so much of what makes a life good?
And that critical questioning is the next step for any informed person.
Absolutely. And if we're going to talk about the flow of money and how it's measured, we need to understand the systems that make it all possible. Join us next time as we dive even deeper into the critical infrastructure of money and banking.